Welcome to the Consumer Corner. This is a podcast that focuses on protecting the consumer from corporate America. One of the things we're going to talk about is different companies that have harmed consumers. Sometimes these stories might be newsworthy. You might have heard about them. Other times they might fly under the radar, so to speak. In today's episode, we are going to talk about Wells Fargo Bank and the scandals that have hurt its reputation, at least in the recent years. We will also talk about some of the things they're doing today, right this minute, to harm you, the consumer. So Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo has generally appeared to have a reputation for good management, at least up until recently. It was able to stay afloat and survive recent recessions with little or no effect on its operating and stock price performance. Fortune magazine claimed that Wells Fargo had a history of avoiding the rest of the industry's what they call dumbest mistakes. And American bankers referred to it as the big bank least tarnished, quote, I'm going to put that in quotes, the big bank least tarnished by the scandals and reputation crises, end quote. But we should probably take a closer look at that quote. It's kind of like saying that, this guy Jim was a mafia hitman, but he was the mafia hitman with the least number of kills. He still killed a bunch of folks, though. Maybe not as many as Jack and Jane did, but that doesn't make Jim a good person necessarily. If your name's Jim, I'm sorry. But that's kind of how I feel about American Banker's quote, the big bank least tarnished. I mean, the standard is pretty low right there, Of course, this was all quite a while ago. In 2013, American Banker named the then chairman and CEO John Stumpf. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's spelled S-T-U-M-P-F. He was named Banker of the Year by American Banker. Another person of note, Carrie Tolsted. Again, also not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. It is spelled T-O-L-S-T-E-D-T. She ran the retail banking division, and she was named Most Powerful Woman in Banking. It didn't end that way, though. But in 2015, the bank was ranked 7th on Barron's list of most respected companies. That's a pretty tall order. I'm not sure any bank should be on there, but it's probably a bit biased. In any case, according to Wells Fargo, this is their language, the success of the company has been built on a cultural and economic platform that merges deep customer relations and engaged sales culture. The company's philosophy is to satisfy the consumer's needs and help them excel financially. They have always emphasized that their main purpose is to do the things the right way and do it in the customer's interest. Not about the popularity of the company or to push their products, but for building long-standing relationships with every consumer. That's, if you know anything about Wells Fargo, that's BS, right? But we'll continue. They claim to take its vision very seriously as to the center of its culture and important to its success. The strive to be recognized by stakeholders for their integrity and principled performance is what drives them to always put their customers first at all times. I'm trying not to laugh because I know how this song ends, and I know what the truth is, at least some of the truth. I'm sure I don't know all of it, but let's go back to the beginning, the history of Wells Fargo. They began their banking activities back in 1852, at least from what I could ascertain. They evolved from being a cross-country express service into one of the biggest retail banks in the world. I think it still stands as the 4th largest bank in America. But they've also been plagued by quite a few recent scandals, and I suspect more to come as they try to eke out just one more dollar from each of their current, future, and past customers. One of the challenges that these larger companies have is continuing their growth that their investors expect based on past performance. So if you think about a company that's doing well, it's growing 10% a year. At some point, you cannot grow 10% a year. Once you get so big, there's no more blood to get out of that turnip, and so that growth just diminishes. They still may do well. They still may make a lot of money, but it's not going up exponentially like it has before. And unfortunately, in most industries, there's only so far you can go before you have to cross a line. And the market can only bear so much, kind of like I was saying. Eventually, you just run out of potential customers. And I think being as big as they are, they've hit that peak. So they had to look for creative, albeit illegal, ways to increase the perception of growth, at least least the perception of it, to satisfy their shareholders. So let's look at some of their activities. In 2013, we had the cross-selling scandal, I guess. This was probably the first scandal, at least recently, that Wells Fargo has had to deal with. And cross-selling means that the number of products a customer buys determines how much information the bank has about them. More purchased products equals more consumer information to that bank. And cross-selling was part of the business of Wells Fargo. In 2013, there were rumors that Wells Fargo employees in Southern California engaged in tactics termed as aggressive. That's an interesting choice of words, but to meet this cross-selling daily target, meaning they had goals they were supposed to meet every day to sell extra things to people that they didn't need. I won't go back to their tenants just now, but that's kind of an opposite to what they said they were doing. This is why if you went to Wells Fargo during certain periods, even now I think they still do it a little bit. They just don't push it as hard. But if you go, and other banks do similar things as well, where you go in there, I just need a checking account. Well, no, we'll sign you up with a savings account too. We'll sign you up with these 6 or 7 different things. It goes to how much information they have about you. And I also think it goes to how much information or how much better they look to their shareholders. They can say, we've opened up 1 million new accounts. Really, it was just like 100,000, but we got 10 accounts for everybody, so it looks like 1 million, right? And I guess it is, but it's still kind of deceitful. But in any case, it was later discovered that employees at the bank were opening accounts and issuing debit or credit cards to people without their knowledge and consent. And they fired about 30 employees for this fraudulent activity that were discovered among the workers there at Wells Fargo. When addressing the public, the company spokesman stated that those who were found were only a few out of a large number of employees in the company. He also put the fault on the employees by saying, quote, "Our team members do have goals, and sometimes they can be blinded by a goal." But did that mean the employees acted on their own without any push from seniors at the company? I doubt it. I'm sure bonuses and other monetary incentives were dependent on employees increasing those numbers. That's the point of a goal. Some alleged the bank had a practice of setting daily sales targets, of which some might have been too high. The employees were put under a lot of pressure to reach each day's target because there were financial incentives for those who were able to reach the daily targets. Even if they didn't say you're going to get X number of dollars by reaching this target, it was pretty clear who was getting bonuses, I'm sure. It was the people who met or exceeded those targets or had the highest metrics, if you will. And who would not want to work hard to earn more money? I mean, you guessed right, nobody. When the targets of a particular day were not met, the shortfall was added to the next day's goal, which was already high on its own before this ludicrous addition. It was alleged that the high figures of the target must have pushed employees to find a way around it, which led to the use of aggressive and unethical tactics, like forcing accounts and products on people who knew nothing or were not interested in those products. Many of the senior management in the company claimed that they were unaware of the scandal or that the employees were put under so much pressure to meet these goals. But in 2016, Wells Fargo admitted that their employees had opened about 2 million accounts without the customer's permissions over a 5-year period, and announced that they would pay approximately $185 million to settle a lawsuit filed by regulators and the city of Los Angeles. The bank stated as part of this that they were committed to putting their customers' interests first all the time. It's kind of an opposite to what's been going on, but we'll take it. And would take responsibility for instances where customers received products that they had not requested. The fine paid was little compared to what other financial institutions have had to pay to settle violations, but that was the deal that they were able to strike at the time. Wells Fargo stock price also dropped by 2%, which really didn't significantly impact their economic stability as a bank. However, following a lawsuit, the bank did take action. They hired a supposedly independent firm that reviewed account openings since 2011 to discover unauthorized accounts. They claim to have refunded more than $2 million to customers for fees accrued by the existence of those accounts. Over 5,000 employees lost their jobs over 5 years. And the head of just lost their jobs. They were fired, right? The head of the retail banking division, the most powerful woman in banking, if you recall, Miss Carrie Tolstedt, retired. Not fired, retired. Probably with a very nice severance package. I wonder if the 5,000 folks who lost their job doing her bidding got a severance, but I doubt it. They were probably lucky just to be able to go file for unemployment. Kind of looked her up on some Google Foo and some LinkedIn. I think they've got a residence in like 2 different places, so I'm guessing she's doing pretty well. She's got a couple homes, unlike the rest of us. But these actions really could not reverse the damages to their reputation that had been done. The CEO of Wells Fargo, John Stumpf, which I mentioned before, he appeared before the U.S. Senate. They really didn't spare him. The senators criticized the company for the fraudulent acts and for putting insane pressure on low-level employees to enrich their pockets. They were also critical, thankfully, about how many low-level employees had their jobs taken away, just fired because they were doing what they were told to do, meeting their company's goals. Still, nothing was taken away from the huge salaries of the CEO and the head of the retail banking division, who had retired earlier. They seemed to do pretty well. It's almost like they were rewarded for it. Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts pointed out the unfairness in the way the discipline was meted out, like it was the fault of these low-level employees. She explained the gravity of the offense. With the gravity of the offense, a more severe approach should have been taken, stressing that if it was just a low-level employee who stole from the company, he might have gone to prison. Still, they're just, these 2 folks we're mentioning in particular, they're just walking freely, even after pushing employees beyond their breaking points to drive up the company's stock value and fatten their pockets. I'm sure they got bonuses related to at least metrics that were driven by this cross-selling. Those 2 individuals, Stumpf and Tolstead, they were later asked to forfeit millions of dollars in equity awards. And unfortunately for them, they did not receive any bonus for 2016. I'm sure that really hurts them. And shortly after, Stumpf resigned without an explanation. Probably his feelings were hurt. And the chief operating officer, Tim Sloan, became the CEO. So after this Los Angeles city attorney lawsuit, the board of directors hired a third-party consultant to look into sales practices and analyze how much consumer harm the company must have caused. So they claim, most likely to find a way to cover it up. But with the release of the report, Wells Fargo announced actions that would help strengthen the control function within the company, probably so they wouldn't get caught again. In addition, they claimed to have clawed back an additional $75 million from Stumpf and Tolstead. I don't know if we got cleared checks on that, or they just said they did it. I'm not quite sure what happened there, but I kind of doubt that played out specifically like that. They were probably reimbursed in some fashion because they were all in on it together. And the Federal Reserve Board got involved a little bit. They placed a strict limit on the company's asset size, forbid the bank to grow past the $1.95 trillion it had in assets at year end. Again, I don't quite know how they measure that or how they really control it, but no more than about $2 trillion in assets for you. We're going to really control you. And this limit was to remain in place until the bank demonstrated an improvement in managing all its risks and protecting its customers. I'm not sure what kind of improvement it really needed, but that's their words. And this decision was taken for customer safety so that misconduct that might cause harm to customers can be avoided and there would not be a repeat of mistakes. So it's like saying, all right, Billy, no more buffets for you until you can prove you won't hurt someone with the forks again. Once you prove you can eat safely, you can have all the food again. And I mean all of the food, since that's basically what Wells Fargo wants. Let's fast forward now to 2018. We had a little auto and mortgage lending scandal. So in 2018, April of 2018, the bank agreed to pay $1 billion in settlement to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, and the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. No idea what that office does. I could probably Google it, but I don't care that much. And this was to resolve an auto and mortgage lending violations that had come up. Of course, this was not the only issue. After settling mortgage violations, Wells Fargo agreed to pay another $480 million to settle a securities class action lawsuit over cross-selling. As may explain the securities class action, I guess. I think, I haven't looked into this too much, but I think the securities class action was based on like shareholders. Shareholders were upset because, or people who have been in either one time a shareholder maybe have sued Wells Fargo for not disclosing certain things and being unethical. That's what I guess happened. Again, I didn't look it up in great detail. But as the great Billy Mays once said, but wait, there's more. The company had to settle with 50 state attorneys in December to resolve civil claims for cross-selling, auto lending, and mortgage lending violations, and agreed to pay another $507 million. Based on quick math, which sometimes I get right, sometimes I don't, but that is over $2 billion in 1 year. Sounds like a lot. But remember, they have, or had, at least on paper, almost $2 trillion in assets. So that's 0.1% of their worth. Arguably, they probably didn't even notice it. So 2020 now, the Treasury Department officials issued a report in January of 2020 on the Wells Fargo account scandal. The report discovered that the bank's business model, quote, imposed intentionally unreasonable sales goals and unreasonable pressure on its employees to meet those goals and fostered an atmosphere that perpetuated improper and illegal conduct, end quote. The former head of the retail banking division was fined $25 million. Stump was fined $17.5 million and received a lifetime ban from the banking industry. So no Hall of Fame for him. Well, actually, he will probably still be in the Hall of Fame. I guess it's legal to gamble in banking, unlike baseball. Hopefully somebody gets that reference. But the cities of Sacramento, Philadelphia, Miami, and Oakland also sued the bank for giving unfavorable mortgage plans to Black and Latino home buyers. Brokers selling the company's mortgages discriminated against Black and Latino borrowers between 2004 and 2009. Roughly 34,000 cases discovered after a government probe that the bank charged non-white customers higher rates, even though they had similar credit profiles as white customers. What's interesting to me here is that only Wells Fargo got caught. This scam should only work if all the banks are doing it, or they were being deceitful. There's the law firm mascot, Toby, barking at something there. This scam should only work if all the banks are doing it, or if they were being deceitful in the mortgage origination process and borrowers didn't realize they were paying more than Wells Fargo. Otherwise, they would just go with other mortgage companies because they'd have better deals. So I'm not quite sure how that actually worked. It'd be interesting if we can have a Wayback Machine and see what's going on there. But there are a number of ways they could have done this, though, such as variable interest rates or misleading explanation as to monthly payments. Or maybe their goal was only to lend to white folks. Maybe Wells Fargo is just to cover for their real name, white folks. Same initials, right? I'm making that up, but you never know. The U.S. Justice Department Civil Rights Division brought suit against Wells Fargo, and it was announced that Wells Fargo would pay $175 million as a settlement for the discrimination suit. Yeah, they don't care about $175 million, but that's what they paid. The Assistant Attorney General for the Justice Department Civil Rights Division, Thomas Perez, claimed that the documents from the Wells Fargo case indicated that the bank engaged in steering minority customers to loans with higher interest rates, and rewards were given to employees who were able to successfully do so. Sounds familiar. Perez said the bank should have done a better job monitoring those practices to avoid those perverse actions. But the incentives put in place by Wells Fargo did not take their customers' interests into account. They only did what was going to benefit the company. It's interesting, not quite doing what's right for their customers. That's their motto, I guess. So today, what is Wells Fargo doing today to harm customers? Like most banks, customers are required to agree to arbitration if you open an account with them. They won't do business with you unless you contract away your constitutional right to a jury trial. We fought a war of this Constitution, and Wells Fargo just wants you to sign it away. And this is replaced by a hearing in front of a company that gets almost all of its business from the banking industry, not from consumers, like at least those that I represent. And I'm not saying they work for the banks, but that's who pay their bills. You can draw your own assumptions. It's also pretty telling, I think, that the bank that wants to work in your best interest won't let you sue them if they break the law. And maybe it's because most of the arbitration proceedings are confidential. So even if they are caught red-handed, no one else can find out. And their excuse is like, let all the banks do this, which is kind of, I don't know, it's not something I would use as my excuse. It doesn't really help. So how does Wells Fargo treat elderly clients or elderly consumers? And I've been getting quite a few elderly clients that have been sued by Wells Fargo. I'm talking folks in their 80s and 90s who have no money. They're on the door of hospice. Their family's taking care of them in every sense of the word. They got no money that Wells Fargo can garnish or take, and no assets. But they will still hire a law firm to go sue these people. And as far as I can tell, their plan is to harass them with a judgment and post-judgment discovery until these folks break down and beg family members to pay Wells Fargo. Because that's the only Wells Fargo is ever going to get paid, is if someone else pays it for these people. And remember that cross-selling goals that incentivized the account reps? Well, Wells Fargo incentivizes these law firms by collecting the money, or the law firms collecting money, rather, by giving them a large percentage of the money collected. And I think it's probably between 33 and 40%. I don't have an exact number yet. I'm hopeful in a deposition we'll figure that out because I intend to get one of them deposed at some point. And in my opinion, they seem to lean toward using the most unethical and pushy law firms when it comes to collecting, from what I've seen, compared to some of the other creditors and debt collectors out there. I know the ones that Wells Fargo used, they're just going to be nasty. That's my opinion, and there's no empirical analysis there. It's just kind of the feeling I get that if someone says they've been sued by Wells Fargo, I know the attorney is going to be just horrible on the other side. And we've sued their attorneys in the past, and I'm sure we'll do so again in the future. I'm not speaking for all of them, obviously, but some of the ones I've dealt with just don't treat anyone with any dignity or respect. As an example, in the Wells Fargo agreement, the ones I've seen anyway, the consumer is forced to sign, of course, to get this agreement. There is an arbitration clause. Now, what that means is Wells Fargo already has a plan in place to solve any disputes that could come up between them and the consumer. But this plan is kind of one-sided. If Wells Fargo wants to sue the consumer, which is what they've been doing, Wells Fargo just forgets about this arbitration clause. And it turns out they don't actually want to do this when they're trying to sue on a debt because it costs a lot of money. It costs several $1,000s on their side, as much as $6,000 easily. And it's not always as quick as getting a default judgment against someone who's too old to know how to respond to a complaint in court. So they refuse to arbitrate. I think in just about every case I've had with them, they have refused to arbitrate until either I filed a motion compelling arbitration or threatened to file one. When in reality they should probably be filing out of the gate, or at least me just telling them, hey, we need to arbitrate. They refuse. And on top of that, they will continue to pursue the judgment, and they'll pay something around $6,000 at least to get a document that says they might be able to collect an amount that is not much more than that from someone who will never pay them because they have no income, they have no assets. And they know they'll never get paid, yet they pay several $1,000s just to harass these people. And at least one case, they know at least some of the charges are fraudulent. They know it's not this person's charges. And to say that their behavior is disgusting is really an understatement. To spend that kind of money knowing it will not benefit the company in any sense of the word just seems odd. Maybe it's time for another securities class action from their investors because they're spending a ton of money that will never. It's just going to punish other people and not reap any reward for them. Just no value in doing it. At least on some of the other scams they were running, I understood why they were doing it. This I don't understand at all, other than just people being nasty. And also that could be a reflection of their counsel they've hired, unfortunately. Maybe it's not Wells Fargo, maybe it's their counsel pushing them to do that. That's certainly possible. But you lie with dogs, you get fleas. I'm not sure which one is the best example there. But so in conclusion, let's remember that according to Wells Fargo, the success of the company has been built on a cultural and economic platform that merges deep customer relations and an engaged sales culture. Still laughing at this, yes. The company's philosophy is to satisfy the customer's needs and help them excel financially, which is why we're suing them for money they don't have. with money we'll never get back. They emphasize their main purpose is to do things the right way and do it in the customer's interest. Haven't seen any evidence of that today. Not about the popularity of the company. Well, I'm certainly not worried about that. Or to push their products. Ooh, that kind of goes against most of what we've heard. But for building long-standing relationships with every customer. By long-standing, I guess they mean sue you and spend the rest of your life trying to garnish wages or take assets. I guess that is technically a relationship. So I guess that last statement actually could be correct in a kind of perverse way. But if you still believe any of that, at least the first three, I've got some land for sale in Arizona. I bet Wells Fargo can set you up with a mortgage too. You may have to sign up for 3 or 4 other products as well, though. Just know that. However, when you fill out the credit application, I recommend selecting Caucasian as your race if you actually want to get a competitive rate. Ironically, though, lying on the app might actually be a crime that would entail a jail sentence, unlike the crimes Wells Fargo has committed. So that's a wrap on today's episode. I hope you had a great time listening and maybe learned something. I'm always on the lookout for press releases or other reputable news sources about the misdeeds of this company or really any financial company that is harming consumers. There's just so many out there, but feel free to send those to me. Please leave a review if you like about this episode, if you were so inclined to do so. You can find me on the web at www.theconsumercorner.com and www.cliffcarlsonlaw.com. You can find me on Twitter sometimes at Cliff Carlson. It's at Cliff_Carlson. And you can find us on Facebook at The Consumer Corner or myself at Cliff Carlson Law. And find me on Instagram occasionally at cliff.carlson.law. Remember to like and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. And of course, if you find this useful, please feel free to share it with others. Have a wonderful week.